Jim Brown. Do you feel separate but equal?
I think it's a good matchup.
I think it probably is. Need I ask if you have ever met before?
No, this is the first time that I've met the governor in person. I've
This evening.
of course, kept
This
up
evening.
with his activities.
Yeah.
You mean you've heard about?
Oh, yes. I was going to ask you, about that. What's the difference between an axe handle and a pick handle?
Well, an axe handle is made for an axe, and it's an entirely different shape from the pick handle, which is made for a pick.
Yes, but not for the top of a head or anything like that.
Well, they're neither one made for heads.
Good. Okay.
You would not want to see one used on a
Just
person.
like a ball bat, they're not made for heads either, are they?
Sometimes they're used that way, though, but we won't talk about that.
Governor, let me just ask you this right straight out. What do you understand racism to mean, or how would you define that, or segregation? Would you say you're a segregationist?
Yes, and I believe in my term, or my definition of segregation, and that is a segregationist, a person that loves his race enough, or other races enough, has enough of racial pride and integrity to want to preserve them. And I think a racist is one that doesn't care enough for his race or another race to where they don't care whether they're amalgamated or destroyed or not.
Then could I ask the governor a question?
Yeah?
Are you familiar with the black Muslims in this country?
Not too familiar with them, no.
Well, they practice black separatism.
Well, that's the reason I'm not familiar with them.
Good answer. Very good answer. That's all to say. But to continue along that line, do you feel that what they're doing is right? They believe that white people should be separate. They believe that they should have a state in this country. I think they felt that Mississippi or Georgia should be, one of those two states should be the state. Do you feel that
I was thinking maybe they ought to make it New York.
New York, you think so? All right, I'm gonna get off of that, Governor. You look too tough.
I think that forced racial segregation is criminal and unconstitutional, and I think forced racial integration is criminal and unconstitutional. I think either one of them is cruel.
You mean on
force.
You mean on a social level?
Any level, where it's forced.
Well, we do have the laws. You mean when the laws are enforced, that if it involves integration, then it is wrong?
If it forces people against their will, against denying them their choice, to separate or to integrate.
There should be an exception.
It'd be just as wrong if the law would be just as wrong to force them to integrate as it would to be to force them to segregate.
Well, don't you?
If a country can finally get to the point of saying, well, you're going to hire this person, you're going to promote this person, you're going to serve this person, then the same country can come right around and tell you you've got to work for that person, you've got to eat with that person, you've got to be served by that person. And this would be cruel and wrong, but so it is when it tells another person that you've got to do this.
Well, the laws of the land tells us all what we have to do, basically.
That doesn't make it right.
Well, I agree with that, but
the Supreme Court goes outside the Constitution. That doesn't make the Supreme Court right, does it?
Don't you believe to have an affluent society, we've all, chose to live in a society together, don't you believe that to preserve that society that we need laws of the land? That's why we have a society. And we cannot make exception to these laws just because a person happens to be black or white. Don't you believe that?
We've got most of these laws because we don't abide by the laws of God, though. And so we try to go against the laws of God and against the laws of nature, and we say, well, now, you're inferior, and you're not going to be able to meet with success in education or in your social life, even in your religious life, unless you do it with another race. And this teaches inferiority to me.
As governor,
and it's wrong, and it's criminal, and it's cruel to teach any one person that he is inferior to another race or his race is inferior.
But as governor of the state of Georgia, did you go by the laws of God or by the laws of the state?
I go by the laws of God and by the laws of the state.
As you see fit.
What is...
No, sir, not as I
I was going to ask the governor, when you say it's morally wrong, integration, I believe that's what you said, or it's
I said
based on
forced segregation or forced integration, racial integration or forced racial segregation. They're both morally wrong, cruel, and they're in violation of the United States Constitution, which is the law of the land, not the Supreme Court ruling that denies the Constitution.
You know, I assume you know Dr. Billy Graham.
Sir?
I said, you know Dr. Billy
Yes,
Graham?
sir.
He was here last night, and he said that racial prejudice is also morally wrong. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes, sir. I think racial prejudice is wrong. Yes. We have more, our government's probably practicing more prejudice today than ever practiced in all the land so far as between the black and whites.
There was a quote that you made on the fight in Miami that Muhammad Ali participated in with Jerry Quarry. And, well, not in Miami, but in Atlanta. But black people always felt that Atlanta was the model city of the South because of its integration and because of the participation in economics of black people. And your statement on the day of the fight was something like this, that it's a dark day in Georgia because this fight is being put on. Now, the law of the land said that a man can participate in his particular profession unless he is in jail. I felt very happy that this fight took place in Atlanta. How did you feel about it?
I felt very sad.
And why was that?
Here's a man that has said, well, here I want to fight in the ring for money, but I won't even wear the uniform of my country. He says that I can't do this, but in other words, I'm going to act different from these other people who stand up for their country and put on the uniform. Had they not fought for this country, if they were not even fighting today and wearing this uniform, that he could not even get in a ring and fight and be a free man to
but
fight.
Isn't it true
so
that...
he's helping to tear down this country with this philosophy, with this belief. Suppose every American, Mr. Brown, suppose every American had decided that they were not going to put on the uniform of their country and not fight for it. We wouldn't have a United States of America, and I couldn't be on your show, and you probably wouldn't even have a show tonight.
It true?
If everybody had that attitude, and I don't like it, and I don't care whether you like it, don't care who don't like it.
Well, I did serve my time, which, of course, I was a little before Muhammad Ali, and I was not maybe as intelligent as he is, because he was the first individual, I think, in this country that came out and said he had nothing against the Viet Cong. I think there were two other politicians in the country that made a very similar statement later. The late Bobby Kennedy came back from Vietnam and basically said the same thing. At the time, it was not a popular stand to make, but today it is a very popular stand. In fact, we have a lieutenant that's on trial now for certain things that happened in Vietnam. But I am saying that this man followed the law of the land. He made his stand. He has been fighting through the courts. He has gone to the higher courts, and he will go to jail if he is proven guilty.
Well, I hope he does go. I hope,
finish?
because I think he's guilty of treason.
Can I finish? Don't you feel that whenever a man goes through the courts, that he is abiding by the laws of the land, and that man who is willing to stand up with that decision is a brave man, regardless of what his beliefs might be?
Governor Maddox?
Not necessarily, no.
We were
Not in
talking-
the boxing ring yet.
No, we were
No,
talking
Governor,
about
you don't
Muhammad.
understand. You know, I really think that you are misunderstood, because I know a lot of Southerners who, you know, really like black people. And, you know, they portray themselves as being really segregationists and that they hate black people and so forth. But
I know some black people feel the same way, but I don't know any Southerners that don't like, white Southerners don't like blacks. Do you know of any? Can you name
I'll
one?
tell you something. That's a very interesting
I mean, can you
point.
name one?
No, I'm going to answer that question. It's an interesting point, you see.
It is, yeah.
They like black people, but they like them in a role, you see. They like them when they're very humble and they're very loyal.
I like humble people whether they're white or black, don't you?
I know, but you see...
And loyal people whether
you see,
they're black
the
or white,
the
don't
white
you?
people
I mean,
have
you
the
just like them.
choice.
You don't like them loyal
You don't
if
like
they're
the
white
black
or-
people to have the choice, you see. It's only a matter of choice.
I want black people and white people to have choice.
Well,
You
let me
got
ask
it
you-
all mixed up. You're trying to twist it around.
No, I'm only trying to agree with you. Would you let me finish?
If you'll tell the truth.
Well, I'm only making an analysis, really. It's not a matter of truth or false. What I'm really saying is that basically history has proven that during the days of slavery, whenever a slave was more or less humble and he did what he was told, that he was in good favor with the master. But whenever a slave was too educated, if he became aware of his own self and he wanted to become more than the master wanted him to become, then he was a bad slave. He was then put down because he represented a threat to the already established kind of white society.
Let me say this. Those situations are true with white people and black people. Now, you're just trying to point it at black people only.
Because
but they've been
that's
throughout
the
the history
subject
of the
we're
world.
talking about.
There's been discrimination. Black against black, black against white, white against black, and white against white. There always has been, there always will be. And you're not going to wipe it out, and Tricky Dick's not going to wipe it out, and the Supreme Court's not going to wipe it out.
You're not addressing it. You're not addressing
Are you
your answer
referring
to
to
my
me as
question.
Tricky Dick?
No, you know who I'm talking about.
Oh, you weren't? Oh.
Well, you know something, Governor? Believe it or not, I don't think that integration should be the number one thrust of our civil rights leaders anyway, because I think what we're really talking about in this country is economic development of black people, because I've found
Economic development of all people.
well, we're talking about underprivileged
How come just
people.
black people? How
We're
come you just
talking
want to do it for
well,
black people? How come you don't want to do it for white people?
I'll tell you why.
Huh?
I'll tell
How
you
come you
why.
don't do it for everybody? How come you always black people? Why don't you talk about all people?
Can I give you an answer?
I think we
Can
understand
Please.
the question.
Yeah.
Can I give you an answer? Do you mind?
Now, go ahead. If you're ready, I'll give you time.
Okay, Governor. What I'm really saying is that there are some people that have suffered in this country, poor people generally, but let's say that we have various ethnic groups in this country that have attained a certain kind of equality. Black people are more or less, along with the Indians, on the last rung of the ladder. Can I finish, Governor?
Boy.
Can I finish? Okay, do you mind?
The governor
Now,
said
what I'm really
fully
saying
agrees.
is that I feel that the way to bring about equality of black people in this system is
What
through
about
economic...
equality of white people? Now,
Can
I
I-
won't interrupt you every time you keep calling black people.
Well,
What about equality of all people?
If you interrupt me, Governor, I can't talk to you.
Well, you're just going to talk about black people, don't include all people. I try to include all people. You're just interested in the black. Why don't you tell these people that in Atlanta, Georgia, where you keep talking about the South, that the percentage-wise, more black people are professional business people, industrial leaders,
Governor,
more of them in our
can I-
state house elected officials than
can I
any other
interrupt
state
you?
in the country.
Can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt
Be
you?
all right, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. See, I'm not really here to fight with you. I'm only trying to have a discussion with you.
I'm not going to
And
fight
I'm
with
trying,
you either.
and I'm
but
trying to use the
I want you-
techniques.
There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of people out there watching you, and I want you to be fair about all people, not just black people. We got a lot of people in this country.
I can understand that, but you do know I have a reputation, right? And I saw
I don't
you.
know about it.
I
I'm
saw
not
you.
sure.
I saw
Tell
you.
me what your
I saw-
reputation
I
is
saw you
now.
bring that state trooper back there, you know, behind the curtain. I know you brought him back there for a reason. But that's not my purpose tonight.
Now, here you go trying.
That is
here
not
you,
my
Well,
purpose
you let me
tonight.
tell you this.
Would you like to join this conversation?
No, I'm going to say this now.
Would you like to join this conversation?
I would let. Why is it coming
let
apart?
me say this, Mr.
Would you let Dick talk a little
No, I've
longer?
got to say this. No, I'm going to let him talk
See,
right
before
now.
I
unless he
got on
cuts
this
me
pro-
off.
before I got on this
Because I got
program,
a
you
state
wouldn't
trooper
talk,
like
would you?
all the other governors in the country carry one, and they require it in the state governments that the governors have security personnel.
didn't get 'em because
so
you
I
knew I
carry
was
one
here,
of
right?
them. I didn't even know you would be here. It was a surprise when I came here tonight and found you would be here.
Wait.
I've never traveled anywhere in the United States since I've been governor. No other governors travel without one security personnel. Some of them have 3 and 4. I carry one man as an aide, not as security.
Governor Mattis, could
Are
I?
you afraid because I came up here with an aide?
I've forgotten what my voice sounds like. Could I would like to say, Governor, I don't want you to create the impression that you were trapped in any sense tonight. I mean, it's been known for some days that Mr. Brown is going to be here. We didn't actually trap you, did we, into coming in?
Well, I want you to know that I didn't know he was going to be here, but it wouldn't make no difference because you invited me and I accepted the invitation.
Yes.
But he said something about I know his reputation. I don't know Jim Brown. Who is Jim Brown?
Well, let me introduce you. They must know it. I guess everyone knows by now that you're Gary Wright.
Right.
Where do you know Gary Wright and his group from?
From England. He
Yeah.
used to be in a band called Spooky Tooth. I met him during my album, All Things Must Pass.
Yeah.
He came, played piano on the whole album. So I returned the favor tonight.
It's very nice. How many in the audience knew that George was in the group up there? How many didn't know?
I'm not in the group. Just
No, I
only
meant
for
that you
now.
were up. I meant that did they recognize you there or not in that subtle way we had you camouflaged, bending in with the background like that. You know, I haven't. You're only the second member of your former organization that I've ever met. I know John.
You didn't meet the other 8.
No. Were there that many?
Yeah,
No,
it's hundreds.
I only. I know
You
John.
ever hear of the 18th Beatle?
There were rumors that the Beatles were not always the same person. In fact,
No.
there was once a rumor that it wasn't even the real 4 of you who came over here on one trip, that they just sent 4
We just sent
guys.
4 dummies out there.
That and, what was the other one? Oh, that you actually were all bald and that had no hair and that you would, that was so you could go out in the street and not
It's
be
all
recognized.
truth. Pure
Oh, it
truth,
is?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then they aren't
What's this?
rumors.
Let's take a little march through time with bird's eye frozen orange.
Plus, well, he's right. You weren't supposed to see that. Let's do. Is this confusing you a little bit?
It
This
is,
setup
all these cameras. Don't know which one I'm supposed to be looking at.
must be exciting
Yeah,
for you to
that's-
be next to a famous person.
It
on
is, it's
television.
very exciting. I don't do this every night, you know.
No, I do, unfortunately. No, you were probably wondering what we were looking at. George saw the lights go on over the cameras, which give me the lead into the commercial. Actually, I don't think the audience at home cares what we're looking at. I mean, they're more interested in what we
Well,
think.
I want to know what's looking at me, really. You know,
Yeah.
I'd like to check it out. There he is.
You don't have to. They always say you don't have to worry about what camera's on; that they'll find you.
Yes.
That's how I.
Big brother is watching you.
Whatever. Yoko sat in that very chair.
Well, I bet many people have sat in this.
Well, a lot of
chair.
people have sat in it, but I was just
I
thinking.
saw the show. It was very nice. Very
Did you see that?
nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one thing they forgot to plug, so I thought I'd plug it for them, and that's their new Christmas record. We wish you Merry Christmas. War is over. Get yours now. Thank you.
Is there such a record?
Yes, he made it after he was on the show, so he didn't get a chance to talk about it.
Is there a slight undercurrent of hostility between you and
No,
and
no,
other members of your
really,
group? No, you can
John,
tell me. I
you
mean,
know-
I wouldn't. I'm not going to tell anybody.
No, I just thought I'd take the opportunity and promote his record for him. War is over if you want it. Happy Christmas.
Yeah. And-
Apple Records.
Well, are you in any sense in contact with each other? I mean,
Yeah, I saw him last night, actually, at the premiere of Raga, which
What?
is what we should talk about, maybe.
okay. But I mean, what did you say? to
I
each
said,
other?
hi, hello. And
Do you
he
have
said,
writers who think of these things, or do you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
have them ready and you can just
Yeah,
snap them right out
yeah.
like that?
We have writers home,
And what-
rooms full of them,
What did he come back with right away?
with hi.
Yeah? Gee, this ought to be. Was there more, or did that
Well,
just go on? That's pretty
You've
good.
got real boring people, you know, to talk to on your show. I'm probably
Yeah.
the biggest bore you've ever had on the show.
Really? You think?
Yeah.
Well, I'll be the judge of that.
Oh.
Listen, I'll tell you.
Well, I don't really, you know, they asked me, do you want to come on the Dick Cavett show? And I said, yeah, I got nothing to talk about, really.
Yeah.
They said, well, think of something, you know, anything. So I thought, okay, we'll go and talk about Raga, which is,
Film. Mhm. You mean that's it? When we're done talking about that, then
then I go.
Yeah. You don't like to talk then?
Well, not really. Sometimes, if there's something to say, but there's
Yeah.
really nothing to say these days.
You know, I have that feeling too. People think that I must love to talk and that I would love to go to parties and yak my head off, and I could go for months without talking.
Well, you talk every night, don't you?
I know, and I've never liked it. I mean, I don't crave conversation. I could sit in an empty room for days and days. I'd have to leave occasionally, but not to talk. I mean, I don't, in other words, I don't have a terrific appetite for talking. The reason I'm rattling on like this is that you've just frightened me by telling me that you don't like to talk. And I figure I may have to, will I have to fill then this last hour
You
of the
just
show?
talk and I'll watch.
Okay, well, we will. Let's do talk about the film. And then, well, before we get to that, though, since we may run out,
let's get to something else.
When you, if you and John and Yoko do meet, though, you're not really
No.
gritting your teeth.
No, we're good friends.
Yeah. Well, all of that about her being the problem with the group, is that slightly silly that one woman could be so much of a problem?
No, the group had problems long before Yoko came along. Many problems, folks.
Can you remember who was the first to say, you know, I bet we'll break up one day, that this won't go on, that this is sort of a dream, that we can't all stick together?
I don't really remember anything about the Beatle days. It seems like a sort of, previous incarnation when I think about it.
And a long time ago, like another life?
Yeah.
Do you regret any of it?
No, don't regret really anything,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what happened and it was good, it was good, but it was also good to carry on, do something else. In fact, it was a relief.
Sometimes they say
some people can't understand that, because Beatles was such a big deal. They can't understand why we should actually enjoy splitting up. But there's a time, when people grow up and they leave home or whatever they do, and they go for a change, and it was really time for a change.
Don't you think a lot of people just envied the idea of being world celebrities, though? And being
some people, would go on and on forever, singing the same tune and playing the same gig if they were making some money,
Yeah.
But I think we'd all rather give that up and try going on our own and try doing something we really want to do. And if we don't make it, then hard luck. But as it happens, we've all got such a lot of goodwill hanging over from being Beatles.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably wouldn't have me on the show if I hadn't have been one. Let's face it.
No, you wouldn't get here on looks alone. Do you,
we will return after this message
now, wait a
from our local
minute.
station.
Just because that comes on doesn't mean you have to do it right away.
Oh,
Do you feel like doing it now?
I just did it.
Oh, all right.
Oh, I see. 4 or 5 minutes.
We
leading.
were-
4 and 5.
I feel, yes, there's a seated, isn't there an Astaire Kelly number that goes something like that, where they sit down on a park bench and...
Yes. Wouldn't you like to be able to dance like them? Perhaps you can.
Yeah, well, I dance so... My dancing has been compared with theirs.
Yes.
I won't say how. What is your shoe size, incidentally?
Well, now, that's an English size, 11.
Yeah, that's an enormous...
That's just one below a canal barge. But they're very comfortable. I didn't realize that you shot feet on television.
Well, I was trying to put you at your ease because I
Thank
noticed
you.
that you had said something backstage about your shoes bothering you. You weren't sure you should have worn those, and
Yeah.
I thought once we get that out of the way, we'd be...
Well, I've been in New
Oh,
York
but they're
for a year now, and they were wonderful right through the winter. Except there's a little
What
hole.
is the... I don't know if you can see this, but there
Can you see the hole?
is a hole right there.
And that gathers snow, of course, as you tread in it, and it becomes impacted, and it's like a little glacier in there, and then you drop it on your hostess's favorite carpet.
Where can you get a pair of these?
Well, I think you'd have to go to England, yes.
Where do they come from, in fact? They are British boots, are they?
They're British boots, yes.
And what is the reason for the hole, and then we'll get off the subject?
I don't know.
No, because have you checked to
Do
see
you
if
have
it's in
one?
both?
Have you got one?
No.
No. Yes, it's in both.
I'm afraid these shoes somewhat call attention to themselves on the screen. They look like
Terrific.
golf, dance,
Terrific.
30s musical shoes. Well, anything else you want to talk about?
No, I'm very bad on clothes, and I like to see them on other people, and
Do you?
sometimes off, but, it's...
You know what we're proving here is that there's no business like shoe business. There's still... it's time to re-examine your contract and see if you have to stay here for the full 30 minutes.
I'm enjoying it so far.
Let's get to the real controversy here. Why was a dog named after you? And
Well, I've
Get
been
to the
told
bottom
that
of
your
this.
production company is called after your dog. Isn't
yes,
that right? Daphne.
that is true.
Yeah.
But you had a dog named after you, which is
I
another
did, because...
other way around or something.
yes, the first thing that I ever did of note, or that people began to sit up at, was a couple of plays in England, one by Shakespeare, Richard II, and another by Marlowe, Edward II. And Jacqueline Suzanne, who at that time was at the height of her, I suppose in England, notoriety for her racy novels, none of which I've ever read, came to see those shows, and when she came back home to Hollywood, she just got a dog, and she named it Josephine. Now, she'd just written a novel called Josephine, but so she altered the spelling to Joseph Ian.
Using your first name as
Exactly.
part of that.
That's according to a gossip column in a Hollywood paper, and I tend to believe those things, as I'm sure you do. So. But alas, Miss Suzanne has died, and I never met her, and how the dog is doing, I've no idea. I wish it well.
That's quite an honor. That beats winning an Emmy or an Oscar. Or
Yes, I do.
it's sort of nice to.
It's very personal. I can sort of relate to that.
You know, it's always safe to say, I suppose, when a play is running on Broadway, that the majority of the people watching on television, by definition, haven't seen it. Simply
course.
because how could that many million people? And this is one of those cases where there's no way that you're the person I saw on the stage. And I know that isn't the goal of acting, to simply disguise yourself, but it's simply a miracle in the case of a great actor like yourself that, besides all the thrilling things you do, that there's no apparent similarity anywhere that I can see between you and everything I saw on the stage at Amadeus. Is that, have you had that experience with other people? Can you meet someone and say...
It's very unnerving, and perhaps you feel it a little bit, to have related strongly to a performance and assume that that is revealing a great deal about the real man.
Sure.
And then you suddenly meet the real person, and you're slightly at a loss because he doesn't sound the same, look the same, or behave the same, or move the same, any of those things. However, that being so, I promise you that the character of Antonio Salieri, who you were looking at for 2 hours in Amadeus, was played by me and does contain a lot of me in him. That's part of acting, and I think a great part. When I started off acting, not having had any formal training, just having played a lot of parts at university, I thought acting was all about putting on beards and moustaches and fancy costumes and doing funny walks and funny voices and doing everything to disguise oneself. The sort of thing Olivier did when he was a young man. Well, if you ask him what happened, he'll say that halfway through his career he realized that he didn't need that false nose, and he didn't need those false calves he used to wear, you know, underneath his tights to build up his legs.
Oh yeah, there's a word for those, I think.
False calves.
That's it.
And you know, you don't need the extra heel on your shoe. You are what you are, and you go out onto a stage using what you have been using all your life, because that is the thing which I think in the end is much more potent than something temporary like a quick moustache or a quick funny look or a funny walk. So actually, when I was being Salieri, I did look remarkably like myself, but there was something about the words, and there was something about the inner intensity which I brought to them, which deceived you into thinking that I and Salieri are not alike, but actually we are quite alike, even though I don't go around trying to murder people, which he did.
Well, I suppose it stands to reason that an actor gets whatever he uses from inside himself. If not, then where does it come from?
Well, there are a number of actors, and I was one of them when I was younger, who looked anywhere except inside myself. And I think once actors should not generalize, I'm just talking about myself. Once I realized that I had inside myself everything that was required for almost every part ever written, even as an extreme a character as Macbeth, who's a mass murderer, thank you, or any extreme person, good or bad. Once you realize that the potential to be that is inside yourself, then acting becomes easier, it becomes releasing, and you become your own psychiatrist in a way.
Is everybody theoretically born with all those potentials in them, or?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
And it's the veneer of civilization and upbringing and the restraints which we put up on ourselves or have put on us by society and habit are very easily broken through. I mean, the stories of people in extremis in concentration camps or locked up and tortured for, you know, a couple of days, break all those things down very, very quickly, and people are revealed to be shambling wrecks or whatever is required by the people who are trying to change them. And I think you can, with a little diligence and searching, and the help of a playwright who gives you words and things to use your imagination on, you can reveal to yourself that, yes, you have enormous potential.
Is it particularly healthy in any way to call upon the murderer in yourself when you play Macbeth? Is it
Well, it has two effects. One, in that I sympathize with real-life murderers. I mean, I see that they haven't been as lucky as most of us to feel the constraints of upbringing and personality, and they are abnormal, but they are not all that different from me, and therefore I'm not one of those people who goes about saying the way to deal with murderers is to hang them, because I think, well, I might be the next candidate for that treatment. And the other thing is perhaps having indulged a few fantasies that do creep around at the back of the brain. I mean, we must all at one point in our lives have thought, I want to stop that by killing it, even if it's only a dog that's yapping at the heels. Maybe an actor releasing that energy in rehearsal and those fantasies in performance will not be as inclined as other people to release them in real life. That's just a fervent hope. I don't think playing a murderer makes you think more and more about how you might be a murderer in real life, in other words.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder how that would work in prisons. I guess everybody knows by now that prisons turn people out worse than they went in, but we don't seem to have an alternative. I wonder, you know, there's a thrilling thing by, why is it you always have to stop and think, Dostoevsky or Tolstoy. Dostoevsky, I think about it. I think he's a theatrical in a Siberian prison.
Well, and there was the play about Marasad, which was being performed by the inmates of an asylum. I'm not quite sure for what reason now, but certainly at school, to take something that we all have experience of, it's certainly true in England, and I guess in America, that drama, plays, releasing a child's imagination, encouraging his fantasies in relationship to other people, always, I think that's the important thing, can make a child race ahead. It can stimulate his mind, it can get him interested in all sorts of subjects he wouldn't otherwise be interested in. I know teachers in England who would like to teach the whole spectrum of the syllabus, math and geography and certainly history, even the grammar of the English language they would like to teach through making up plays and putting themselves into situations. Dramatizing is what we call playing, isn't it, when we're kids? Yeah. And of course, drama is a play. It's the same word, play acting. Yeah. So there's no mystery about acting. The trouble with most people is that the older they get, the less conscious they are of playing, of play acting. And we all play all day long. You know, from the moment you get up, you're one thing with the person you've been sleeping with, and you're another person to the to your boss in the office, and another to the girl who serves you coffee at the office, and you're somebody else to the cab driver. It's a different side of your personality, which we all play. Yeah. And yet the people who do that will come up to me and say, "How on earth do you do it?" Well, I do it like they do it.
But they're right to ask you that, because the minute they step on stage, they don't know what to do with their hands, and they don't look, and they sound phony, and they can't act.
But
Otherwise,
we know plenty of actors like that, don't we? No, it is.
Because they don't associate the two at all.
I know. Well,
and many actors don't. And even I've been interviewed sometimes by people who, even in an office, who are from a newspaper, will say, "Okay, let's start now," and declare the interview started. Do you feel that in your and this in the privacy of a room, their voice changes that much? You know what? I'd love to use you as a test for. Not long ago, I saw some amateur theatricals, and I was watching a girl who was not bad, but it was clear that she was an untrained beginning actress. And yet, she had worked on it, obviously, and she was giving it her all. But there were little subtle things, and I couldn't figure out what they were, that made it clear to anybody who walked in that this girl was acting for maybe the third time. If you had to play a guy who's doing a scene from something you know, who's, and the director said, I don't want to be awful, you know, I just want to make it clear that the guy's an amateur. Just subtly make it clear that he's an amateur. Maybe doing Henry V when he shouldn't.
Let me just be clear what you're asking me before I say whether I'll try and do it.
Okay.
That I should pretend to be an actor who isn't very good or
Who is just not bad, but inexperienced and an amateur.
It's so far from my own experience, Dick, that I
You've
don't
never
know that
been?
I can do it. And I'm not going to try and do it because I
You know, I'll tell you what I mean.
I'm not frightfully good at that, but you do it.
No, I can't do it, but I remember I was just thinking, there's just something about
Yes.
the way she's standing
Well,
that isn't totally wrong, and yet no one stands that way in real life. No one gestures quite that way, but I can't really quite do it.
Well,
it's
I
a little
tell- I
like
tell-
asking a good horseman to ride badly.
All right. Well, now we're talking about the stage, aren't we? Not talking
Yeah.
about film.
Yeah.
The trouble about the stage is that the audience sees the whole body. They are far enough away from it, even in a small theatre, to take it all in. And of course, because they're not engaged in the action of the play, they are there only to be an audience who listen, and indeed a spectator who watches. They can take it all in with an objectivity which normally they don't apply. I mean, we're talking together now, and apart from our opening, I've not looked at your shoes once. But if I were in the audience, I could still, or I with a camera, I could take it all in. So that you, trying to impress the audience, will have to be aware of what your feet are doing in a way that you don't, talking to me, have to be aware of it. And I think that's the initial problem that an actor has to solve, so that if I'm talking to you, all I need to bother about is my feet, and I can be doing anything I want with the rest of my body. And it's not really upsetting you, because you don't, you know, you're concentrating on my eyes. But all those people have seen that I'm terribly nervous back here, even as I'm gabbing on, of being very relaxed. So an actor has to somehow, it's the great word all actors use, relax. And that relaxation is a technical achievement which is to do with relating, having control over every part of their body, their minds, so that it doesn't wander, their imaginations, their face, the tone of their voice, so that all those attributes can express the character that he is portraying and the intention that that character has in speaking or in being or listening or sitting still. And when you have that total control over all your attributes, you are no longer being an ordinary person. You are then playing, you are then acting. And although it looks natural to the audience, if a member of the audience were to step up onto a stage and see a person behaving, playing in this way, once they got up to him, they would say, "What's the matter with this guy? He's behaving very peculiarly."
Seen close up.
Seen up close to. So it's all to do with distance. Now, in the movies, it seems to me, not having made very many, that's the crucial difference, that the camera is very like somebody just in the room with you. It concentrates very partially on you, usually on the face. And the body can be doing what it wants. That's why so often when wonderful film actors step out onto a stage, you have the same reaction as you did with that young girl who's only acted 3 times. You say, what's happening with those hands? They're usually twitching because they're getting rid of a lot of nervous energy. In which case you put them in your pockets. Oh, actors also don't put your hands in your pockets. I think that's the very best place for them.
So
Does that sound credible, what I've just said?
Yeah, that's very illuminating. It's the opposite of genius in a way. There are subtle signs that betray the amateur that you can't quite pick out. They're not as obvious as jiggling their hands. It's just something's a little wrong. Just as with a great actor, you can't exactly say why he's thrilling you at that moment. You just know that it is. It's not quite an opposite, but it's. Did you ever have trouble with your hands? I remember reading a book on acting when I was a kid that said It was really a beginner's book in acting, written for about 9th grade level. And one line in it, it said, when you get on stage, the first thing you'll think of is that everybody's looking at your hands. Forget it, they're not. But can you remember a time when you wondered what to do with your hands on stage? Can you recall
yes,
that?
And it's amazing because I look at these things when I go to see plays, which I do a lot, that so many actors don't know what to do with their hands.
Even yet?
Even yet, it doesn't matter how old they are.
What do you do with your hands?
Well, going back to what I just said, I try and tie them up to my thoughts and my imagination and my face. I don't, but then, of course, having achieved a certain relaxation, I might decide to signal something to the audience which they should receive, that they should understand that although I am very calm, I am, the character is a little bit nervous, so I will throw out what we call, is it body language that we all know about these days? Yes. Of course, you want me to get deeper into this or not?
Yeah, take a chance.
All the great actors, right from Richard Burbage, who was the first man to play Shakespeare's parts, right through to Olivier, Marlon Brando, whoever you take as the latest exponent of great acting, I'm mainly talking about the theatre, have been praised for their reality. They are so truthful.
True to life is the average
Absolutely.
Person's judge of an actor.
Now, I don't know how you imagine Richard Burbage acted, you know, in those great big open-air theatres with no scenery, but you could imagine it was all sort of this sort of thing. And yet, when Burbage died, someone said, "Burbage dead? That cannot be. I've seen him die as King Lear, Othello, Hamlet. How can it be he's died?" He had been, to that audience, so real. But we know from pictures of the old actors and from films of the 19th century actors that their notion of reality was quite other from ours. It reflected the age in which they lived. Henry Irving, 19th century actor, his notion of reality, the bells, the bells, the bells. Once you can repeat something 3 times because the British Empire will never set, and there's nothing wrong with the world, you know, and the certainties of the bells. Well, today, it's all twitches and body language.
And they could move an audience to tears with what would get roars of laughter now.
Exactly. And so fashions of reality change, and the reality today is all governed by this thing, the camera. It can get in very close, and it can guess what is behind. Everything is ambiguous. Everything has to be guessed at. Everything is subtle, and even then we may not reach the truth.
Yes, it can be uncomfortable knowing that 1 million people are looking into your dimple.
Well, that's why I want to do more films, and the film which you're dying to talk about, A Priest of Love.
I was going to tell you that we're also governed by that, the clock. Take my word for it. Pretend you see one there.
Okay.
And I think when we speak of clocks that you see them there. And here is a scene from the film
Terrific.
in which you play D.H. Lawrence.
Yes.
And before we go into it, and we have only a few minutes left, believe it or not. Gee, that was interesting, the way you talked about acting. What should we know about this?
That it's a biography of the love story between D.H. Lawrence, the English writer, and his amazing wife, Frida, and their travels around the world looking for happiness against all the odds. John Gielgud chasing after them, burning the books, deporting his paintings.
Gielgud plays the censor.
Yes, he does.
Had you had the opportunity, was there something you would have wanted us to know before you saw that precise clip?
Only that neither of those people was Ava Gardner.
More's the pity.
No, I think just that it's a reflective passage towards the end of the movie when he's dying of tuberculosis, but with his typical guts, is trying to gear himself up to writing his last book, Lady Chatterley's Lover, which he achieves at the climax of the movie.
What's the truth in how much she helped him and collaborated on that work?
I think the scene you've just seen is typical of the way they worked. He was, once he had sensationally rescued her from a dull marriage, and they had a divorce case which I think set the pattern for divorce in this century. It was 70 years ago, you know, that they were amazing, the work with divorce. They then clung to each other through thick and thin, and I think, as you said, every woman he subsequently wrote about was mainly Frida, whether it was a mother figure or the lioness that he called her, or the mistress, or whatever. And out of that wonderful tempestuous relationship, I think came a great deal in the novels and much of the poetry. I mean, his love poetry is just staggering, and it's all written to Frida.
Did you know a lot about him beforehand? Are you old enough to have Lady Chatterley's Lover been considered a dirty book in your pubertal years?
Certainly, and I read the relevant pages.
The much-soiled pages.
I think it's only 15 years ago that we've been allowed to read the whole thing in
That's
England.
right.
At any rate.
Amazing.
It's astonishing.
Yeah.
But I come from the same part of the world as he does, and share a similar background, and had always known about D.H. Lawrence and studied him a little bit at university, but now know a great deal more about him. And met when I was dressed up and read all that redness. One or two people who knew Lawrence. And we were in northern Italy, and I walked into the kitchen of the villa where we were filming. There was a little old grandma in black, and as I walked in, she said, "Lorenzo."
Oh, really?
And I said, well, yes, of course I'm playing Lorenzo. No, but she had been a maid in an hotel when the Lawrences had visited there half a century before. I mean, her memory may have been a little shaky, but it was...
Still, she didn't mistake you for one of the Smith brothers. Yeah. Well, any man who had the sense not to go ahead with a movie that was going to be titled The Bells of Hell Go Ting-a-ling-a-ling, I think is... I know you think I'm making that up, but wasn't there once such a project? We don't have time to talk about it.
There was a project. We started making it, and it began to snow in Switzerland, so we stopped, but it gave me $4,000, which kept me for the next year, and it meant that I could work in the theater, which is where at that time I belonged, and so it saved my life in a way.
It's nice. Probably. So it's really you at last. How are you?
I'm pretty tired. It's been recording so much, you know.
You're tired now?
Yeah, I haven't had a sleep in about all night. You know, I've been working on the last LP.
How much sleep do you need to be alert?
Alert? I guess about 8.
8 hours?
Yeah, I had about 8 minutes, so, you know. And then it
Minutes?
answers itself, yeah.
I've slept longer than that in my monologue. Want to cut the racket off on the sound here? Nice gentleman. What is that sound that we hear irritating us so dreadfully?
Well, it sounds something like the New York street. I don't know. It's like today the air is all static, so the amplifiers are static. Music is loud, the air is loud, and you know we're trying to settle things down a little bit. But it's going to take like a rest, you know.
I asked a practical question and got a philosophical answer. I think
Is
that's
that philosophical?
terrific. I thought it
Oh, I
was.
thought
You
that
said
was
there's
George.
static in the air today
Yeah.
and all.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to get a point across before we, you know, take our rest. Oh, I'm sorry, you're still on.
We're going to both sack out. Mr. Young, will you entertain the audience for us? Let me ask you something. What really happened to you that night at Woodstock? Did you stay on so long you just really were...
No, we was playing in the morning.
Yeah.
And it was announced that it was canceled. The show at the Dick Cavett was canceled, so... And then later on it was announced that it was on.
Oh, really?
And I didn't know what was happening. I was so exhausted, you know.
Yeah.
It was like a, what do you call those things? Nervous breakdown or whatever, you know.
Physical breakdown.
Yeah.
You don't suppose it was a real... You didn't have you ever had a nervous breakdown?
Yeah, about 3 of them since I've been in this group, since I've been in this business, you know.
Really? Gee. I didn't mean to pry, but since you brought it up, I thought I would mention it.
Right, that's cute. That's
Yeah.
great.
They said that everyone was amazed at the absence of violence. It's become a cliche now about that big festival and about the others. Were you surprised at it? Do you think that...
I was glad. That's what it's all about, you know.
Yeah.
It's, try to keep violence down, you know, keep them off the streets. And like a festival, 500,000 people was a very beautiful turnout, you know. I hope we have more of them, you know. It'd be nice.
Yeah. What was the controversy about the national anthem and the way you...
I don't
Played
know.
it.
All I did was play it. I'm American, so I played it. I used to have to sing it in school. They made me sing it in school, so it's a flashback, you know. I don't know about it.
This man was in the 101st Airborne, so when you write your nasty letters in...
Nasty letters. Wow,
Right.
you really
Well,
trying
people,
hard.
when you mention the national anthem and talk about playing it in any unorthodox way, you immediately get a guaranteed percentage of hate mail from people
Well,
who say, how
that's
dare
not unorthodox. That's
anyone...
not unorthodox.
It isn't unorthodox?
No. I thought it was beautiful. But then there you go. You know.
Oh, but don't you find that there's a certain mad beauty in unorthodoxy? Yeah. Right. I knew you'd do that someday. I knew you'd wig out on my shirt.
Right. Don't forget it.
Do they ever send that shirt back with too much starch in the collar?
I don't know nothing. I know nothing about it.
That's the best shirt I've seen in a long time. Why do the super groups keep breaking up? There are always rumors that your group is breaking up and Big Brother broke up, and
Well, probably because like they want to get into individual things on their own, or maybe they might want to get into other things besides music, you know. And
you mean guys in your group would want out of the music business and into?
well, not necessarily. Maybe they might want to get into their own music, because like what I was trying to do, was like do a today's type of blues, like manic depression and so forth. And like Noel Redding, he's into more harmonic thing, you know, when you sing and so forth. And like he went to England to get his own group together.
Oh, who's this?
Noel Redding, the bass player.
Oh, Noel Redding,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, Billy Cox playing bass this time. And I think it's the last job we'll do until we, you know, take a rest.
Really?
It's like we've been working very hard for 3 years, you know.
Can you tell some nights you're just not making it at all? Do you ever have
Oh,
the
yeah, I
urge
can
to
tell.
just walk off and
That's why I hate
apologize?
compliments. You know, compliments is so embarrassing sometimes, because you know really the truth of what's happening. And sometimes people don't really try to understand. You know, it's like a circus that might come in town. So, wow, watch that, you know. And then as soon as you fade away, well, then they go on and feed upon the next thing, you know. But it's all right. It's just part of life. I'm digging it myself. I like it.
You're considered one of the best guitar players in the world.
Oh, no.
Certainly, well, one of the best in this studio, anyway.
How about one of the best sitting in this chair? How about
Yeah. Do you have to practice every day the way a violinist does? I mean, if you're not working, say you're off in England and you're just taking off
I
a
like
couple
to,
of months, do you have to keep shape every day?
Yeah, well, I like to play to myself in the room, or before we go on stage or something like this, or whenever I feel like, you know, whenever I feel down or depressed or whatever, you know. I just go on and play. And I can't practice, so it's just always constantly, what do you call it, like a jam, you know. It's hard for me to remember any notes because I'm constantly trying to create other things. That's why I make a lot of mistakes.
Do you read music?
No, not at all.
No. Do you ever run into any of the guys from the old 101st?
Yeah, I run into some
Do
of
you?
my friends. Yeah.
Do they wonder, think your life is strange compared to what they're in?
Oh, you know, I wouldn't matter really, because, you know, there's so many different things going on now. You know, you can't take time out to say, oh, what do they think about me there? Oh, you know, and all this kind of stuff. You know, I can't go through all that. I've been going through it for 3 years. I think they're pretty well off if they ever get out of that stuff. You know, to see me again, it's for me to see them. I feel very lucky about that.
You're still looking for that certain girl?
Certain girl? What girl?
The certain one.
Oh,
You're not married.
no.
Do you see yourself married ever?
No, I hope not.
But you'll never get a situation comedy on television, then.
By that time, I think it would be obsolete.
How about that? Do I sit down to shake hands again to kill time? It's an interesting question you asked me during the applause. When there are two men, which one sits down first?
I said, do I sit down first or do you?
I guess I'm the host,
You're the host,
theoretically,
so
so it's nice to have you here, as they say, and then you say it's nice to be here, and then we go right on. That fall that you take is wonderful. I think I used to be able to do that fall that you did at the beginning of the old...
You used to be able to. You're still a child. You can.
Well, maybe I am. I wanted to be a stuntman as a kid, and I used to do that fall and others. Did you do that every week, that fall?
No, we just did that fall once.
I'm a little naive.
No, we just did it once.
Yeah.
People have always asked me if I ever hurt myself falling. I only did once.
Yeah.
On the show, I was carrying 2 folding chairs in each hand, and I was supposed to trip in the living room over a little toy truck.
Yeah.
And I was thinking so hard about getting those chairs to fall that way that I forgot to tuck under, and I fell on my shoulder and really hurt it.
Do you have any permanent damage other than that, or from
Yes,
all those years?
yes,
You do?
yes. Strangely enough, I do.
Doesn't show, whatever it is. But I don't see it.
Sometimes. No, I had some X-rays taken not too long ago, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And all the vertebrae in my neck are kind of like this, all
Wow.
mashed together. And he tells me that Red Skelton has the same thing.
He took spectacular falls.
Oh, beautiful falls, yes.
And that's what messed up his neck?
Yes, and mine too.
Too many
tend to fall
pratfalls.
kind of on the, too many pratfalls.
If you
But
fall,
I wear it with honor.
That's terrible. If you fell on your neck, does it mess up your prat or whatever? I mean, does it work the opposite way? Why your neck, I wonder? That's where the shock is taken.
I guess that's where the shock comes.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Why are you wearing this Halloween?
I only have one reason, and it's unassailable. My wife likes it.
It's very great. It's very nice. Is it sort of Edwardian, isn't it, or something? Or what
Yes,
is
it is.
Yeah. Do people
I have to-
recognize you in this?
It's the rotten disguise.
It is?
It doesn't work with anybody.
Really?
It doesn't work.
Are
no.
people coming up to you saying, "Are you Dick Van Dyke?"
Well, I have something to tell you. I went to the
did?
theater last night. I got off the plane, went straight to the theater,
Yeah.
and was sitting. I wanted to see Jason Robards in a play. And just before the lights went down, I was on the aisle, and across the aisle was an attractive blonde girl who kept looking at me and trying to. I obviously wanted to say something and couldn't get up the nerve. Finally, just before the lights went down, she came over and she said, "Excuse me, are you Dick Cavett?" I swear.
Are you kidding me?
It's to my credit, I did not stand up.
Oh, I was going to say, if only you had been standing, I would have really, that would have really been
I
something.
don't
But
know.
you were sitting, of course.
But I said, Dick Cavett would not be caught dead with a Van Dyke like this. I'm sorry.
or something. Listen, we have no laugh track here, so you're taking a big chance. That film called, I think, was it The Morning After is the correct title?
Yes.
Isn't it, that film? That's really a frightening thing to see you that way. And I know that a lot of people, friends of mine, were shocked when they found that you, I guess the news came out in one of the news magazines first, I think, that you had been alcoholic. Actually, that isn't correct to say, is it? Because alcoholics never say they were alcoholic. They say they're
That's
Are
absolutely right.
alcoholic
You're
or
always an
something.
alcoholic.
Yeah.
They say they're recovered or recovering
Yeah.
alcoholics.
One thing that's fascinating about that is that we're all conditioned to laugh at your moves on screen. And I don't know how you got the comic edge off your motion, which I think is intrinsically funny. In that it's amazing. I mean,
Well, Dick Heffron, who was the director and a marvelous guy, he was very understanding about it.
yeah.
Before each take, they'd say roll him, and then just before he'd say action, he'd say, "This is not a comedy."
Yeah.
Before every take.
Yeah. But that frightening look in your eye and that whole, it looks, anybody who's been around an alcoholic knows that
Knows that,
feeling.
yeah.
And yet how close to your story was that story in the film?
A lot of it. It was written by a friend of mine who is a recovered alcoholic and a very good writer, and we kind of got together, and I got together with the director, and we shared experiences. But almost every alcoholic's experience is pretty much the same. Once you get on that progression, it's...
Yeah.
I'd like to say one thing very important before I forget it, is there are a lot of people dying from alcoholism because the rest of us are enabling them to, because there's a stigma about that disease, as you probably know. And for centuries, they've been putting the blame on the character of the addict, and it's not so. There's no degeneration or loose morals or character defects in an alcoholic. It's a physical disease. An alcoholic has a certain metabolism and glandular setups that make them chemically adapt themselves to alcohol. And for them, it is a stimulant, and it is calories, and it is food, and their bodies adapt to it. And it is a true addiction. And it has nothing to do with a person not being mature enough not to drink too much. It's a true addiction, like heroin addiction.
Does that mean that you were destined to become an alcoholic at birth if you
Yes.
ever took a drink?
That's true. Now,
That's,
for me, it took many, many years as just a social drinker along with everyone else.
Yeah.
And of course, by the time I realized I was in trouble, I was too deluded, like most alcoholics are, to be able to understand what was wrong with me.
Can you, I know it's supposed to be hard to find the point where you became an alcoholic in the sense that you were over the line into the danger zone. Can you isolate that point in your own life?
No, and I've
You know?
tried to many, many times. When did I go from the point where I drank with my friends at a party or something, and when I began to drink way ahead of them? And I can't, you tend, I find, to get with people who are heavier drinkers
Yeah.
without realizing what you're doing. And now that I'm a non-drinker altogether, I find that I've lost most of my friends who drank very heavily.
They
just don't see them.
They avoid you?
They kind of avoid me.
Yeah.
I think I get to their conscience a little bit now.
Are there well-known people in the in our business and show business who are alcoholic that the public doesn't suspect? Obviously, I'm not asking for names, but do you know of
There
cases
are
of-
many recovered alcoholics
Yeah.
in show business, many, and of course they don't want to say so, and I can't blame them too much.
Yeah, a few do, like yourself, and some don't, do they? And some don't like to talk about it.
Mercedes McCambridge, for one,
Yeah.
particularly.
Yeah.
She kind of broke the ice for the rest of us, I think.
I know Robert Young has talked about his in
Yes,
articles.
Dean Andrews.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Sometimes people have asked me, this boring interview questions, what are you proudest of in your career and that kind of thing. And it's always hard to think of those things, but I did a two-part show on alcoholism one time. And
Yes, I saw
whenever
it.
you get a letter that says, your show saved my life, or something, I guess that has a kick that you can't get in any other kind
That's
of
very,
show
very
business.
true. And I'm sure you got a lot of those.
There are a lot of those. Television has a great power that way, if used
Yes.
that way.
And I have a collection of letters that I prize very highly from people who somehow were kind of shocked into seeing themselves in that movie and did get help for
Yeah,
themselves.
that must have sent a lot of people for help.
It did.
Yeah,
It did. And a lot of people, I've had spouses of alcoholics write to me and say my husband or my wife wouldn't watch the rest of the movie. They had turned it off or left the room. They wouldn't watch, which is a pretty good indication they have a drinking problem.
Yeah, gee. Somebody wanted to know during the break if you were drinking in the days of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which led me to a question. Can you look at old shows that you've done and tell when you were crocked, or were you ever in your
Never.
work?
I was never crocked. I love that. During work.
Yeah.
I did not drink before work or during work or ever in the daytime,
Yeah.
which was my own particular cop-out. I said, I'm not one of those guys who has to have a drink in the morning, and I do not drink in the daytime or at work. I drink at home after work. And that proves to me that I didn't have a drinking problem.
That's right. A lot of people say that. Are you kidding? I can go all day without a drink.
That's right, by
you-
gritting my teeth.
And yet they can be alcoholic.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
People who drink, get drunk once every 3 months can be alcoholics, periodic alcoholics.
There's a frightening book. I don't know if you've. I just started reading it today. I made a note of the title of it. It's called A Sensitive, Passionate Man by a woman named Barbara Mahoney.
I read it.
Did
yes.
you?
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
just
very sad, tragic story.
Yeah, my wife has met her somewhere, and it's just the destruction of her husband and almost of herself
Yes,
by alcohol.
that's true.
Yeah.
And in reading it, having been, I not only was through in treatment myself, but I've attended the Johnson Institute at St. Mary's Hospital in Minneapolis, one of the best treatment centers in the country. Vernon Johnson wrote a book called I'll Quit Tomorrow, which I recommend to anyone who has a relative or a husband or wife that they think has a drinking problem. It's marvelous. But that guy in the book did all the wrong things. He went to a psychiatrist to find out what was wrong with his character or his personality that made him drink.
And you say that's bad.
That's not even valid.
Yeah.
What was wrong with him, he was physically addicted to alcohol.
Yeah.
That was the reason. And you need a different kind of treatment, different kind of help.
One of the shocking moments in that book was when she called a doctor, and he said coldly, "There's nothing I can do."
And he was right.
And he may have been right, but he could at least have explained that, because he just left her
Why?
hanging. I mean, he just sort of hung up the phone, and
Doctors, for some reason, don't deal too much with alcoholics because there isn't anything medically you can do if they don't want to quit. And most people who are deeply into a chronic or acute alcoholism do not, at that point, want to quit.
yeah.
They can't conceive of life without drinking. It looks desolate and bare and dull to them.
You can see why people would go to a psychiatrist, though, because in your own case, for example, you had everything, fame, success, money, family, home, all of that, and you were destroying it, theoretically.
Yes.
Therefore, you must hate yourself. Therefore, you must go to a psychiatrist, would, I suppose, be the line of reasoning.
That's true.
But the fallacy is that,
That there is no pre-drinking morbid psychology in an alcoholic. It happens as a result of his physical addiction. Every time you get drunk, medically or legally drunk, you lose about 10,000 brain cells. Gone, dead, died forever. And about 1 million to 2 million more that are severely damaged that will go if you stop drinking, and you actually lose IQ points. In drinking, you can lose up to 30 IQ points, which you can't get back.
that's astonishing.
Yes.
You say you were never drunk when you were, say, taping or filming a show, but since you drank all those years, there must have been some debilitation, something that might have showed over the years in your work. Are you able to spot that in watching your work over the years?
No, I'm not.
If you were losing
the
those
only thing
brains.
I noticed was energy.
Yeah.
A little debilitation, and I didn't have quite as much energy. And I thought, I wonder what's the matter with me. I exercise and everything. The delusion, I didn't stop to think that it might be that.
In Barbara Mahoney's book, it's terrifying that what happens to the wife of an alcoholic, because she has the kids and the school, and the kids are embarrassed by the terrible scenes they see at home and say things like, is Daddy really going to hurt you, Mommy, and things when he would threaten her or hit her or whatever. But she said at least the husband could get away, even if he stumbled out of the house and went to work all day drunk, he at least got away, but she was there the whole time, and she would drink too. How did it work with your own wife?
Well, my own wife was an alcoholic too, it turns out.
Yeah.
We were both in treatment. As a matter of fact, my wife is a therapist now at a treatment center in Phoenix at St. Luke's Hospital.
Treating alcoholics?
Treating alcoholics, yes.
Yeah.
And doing very well at it, as a matter of fact. So we didn't have quite that same problem, but it's true that either spouse, the one who is non-alcoholic, is as sick emotionally. They're very sick and they need treatment. Usually if you don't treat both of them, the alcoholic does not get well. What happens is that the alcoholic is very ashamed and very guilty about what he is doing, and he cannot help himself. But he can't stand to attack himself that way, so he projects his own anger at himself onto his spouse. He said, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't drink. You're the one that makes me drink, and uses those kind of rationales. So that eventually the spouse begins to feel, maybe I am the reason. Maybe it's me. If I just would change and treat him differently, he wouldn't drink. And they become very neurotic and sick themselves and need help.
Which of you was it who decided to seek help first?
It was me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the one, yeah.
Yeah.
I began to have the one symptom that you cannot avoid, and that's a personality change when I drank. A personality. I was always a very happy drunk if I got drunk. And I had a very high tolerance, which I found out later is one of the clues. If you have a very high tolerance and can stay on your feet speaking clearly when everybody else is going down the drain, that's a sign that you may have a propensity physically for alcohol.
Yeah, you do hear that very thing used by people who say, well, so-and-so has no trouble because she never changes or he never changes. He can take 6 or 8 drinks and you'd never know it. That is. I've also heard that an increased tolerance is dangerous.
Increased tolerance, at a certain point, this happened to me, your tolerance goes to nothing. Just all of a sudden, you can't drink at all.
Yeah.
But strangely enough, one of the things that makes an alcoholic physically, physiologically, is that it is a depressant for most people. For an alcoholic, it is a stimulant. And as long as his blood level of alcohol is on the rise, he'll perform better. His motor responses will be better. His concentration will be better. A normal person gets worse.
That is, so a lot of performers claim that they do get better in performance if they have a drink. And this is true, isn't it? Then with some
if they
cases.
tend to be people who will adapt chemically to alcohol, it very likely is true.
Because there are people who will say that's never true. It's flatly never true. A drink ruins you. But, well, the Limelight story, I guess.
We won't mention any names, of course.
No. But that's a vicious trap because a performer has to be good. He has to have his edge on, so to speak.
Yes.
He has to have that drink. And
that I never tried. I always felt that would be a dulling thing.
Yeah.
And of course, there was always the guilt there. It's a bad thing.
It might have been well if
I think it was a bad thing.
You were raised that way?
Yes.
Was there no drop of liquor in your home as a child?
I think there was a drop of liquor in my home, but nobody ever drank it.
Yeah. Yeah, I come from a culture, Midwest Nebraska, where there was booze in the house, but weeks would go by without anyone having any.
That's true.
That seems to have changed even there, though. I think the whole country is.
We've become a drinking culture. We really have.
Are there any figures on how many people are alcoholics and don't know it? I don't know how you'd get them.
Well,
but
they
there
think
might
there's
be
about
estimates
15 million in the United States.
Yeah.
And of course, there's only about 250,000, I think, in AA. And a few thousand others in treatment centers around the country. And the rest are people who are probably listening to us right now and denying to themselves they have a problem, and something's gnawing back there. Gee, I'm drinking too much. But like I always told myself, I drink because I enjoy it. I can quit anytime I want. And I was lying to myself. I really couldn't.
Yeah.
But as long as you keep doing it, you never have to prove that.
Yeah.
This is
Will be.
water here.
You can't take a drink, can you?
No. I've seen reports that say an alcoholic can be taught to be a social drinker again, but it isn't so because his body never really changes.
Yeah.
I think there's some damage that's done that never can be set right again. And if you ever drank, I think I'd probably be back to drinking too much again. And I like life too much without it now. Now that I'm completely free of it, I don't have any desire to ever drink again.
Did anybody like an agent or anyone ever warn you to stop drinking or you'd ruin your career?
No, but a very dear friend of mine did.
Yeah.
About 4 years ago, I believe. Very dear friend of mine. And it's amazing how deluded I was, because I really wasn't very nice about it. And I said, that's my business. I enjoy it, and that's my business. I don't think you have any right. And the poor man cried. And I couldn't see it. It took me a long, long time to understand, that he was seeing me objectively, and I was totally deluded about it.
At the later point, did an agent or anyone ever warn you not to admit that you were an alcoholic, because that would ruin your career?
Many, many of them.
Really?
Yes, they don't. Please don't do that.
They didn't care if you didn't quit, but they just didn't want you to talk about it.
Please don't talk about it.
Really?
Well, I didn't know, what kind of reaction I might get. I must say I've received thousands of letters, and not one negative letter from anyone. Not one. Which I think shows that at least we're changing. That it doesn't have the stigma that it used to have.
I hope you don't mind my probing you on this.
Not at all.
Because I knew you did agree to talk about it, so if it looks prurient on my part, it isn't. I just think it's
Can you
fascinating.
be prurient about alcohol? I didn't know that.
Does that have to, does prurient have to be sex? I didn't realize.
I don't know. I always thought it
Let's
did.
check on the dictionary. Are you addicted to that? I'm sorry. I don't know what I meant.
My tolerance level isn't what it was.
But when it increases, look out. Wait a minute. I had a family on this show. It was really quite a gripping interview to do, and certainly to watch, who on one of those alcohol shows, where the mother and the father and the daughter, who had found the mother with a bullet in her head, having tried to kill herself. And I wonder why some alcoholics try suicide and others don't. Were you ever near suicide?
No, although I thought of it at times. I think almost every alcoholic does. When they're it's a terrible depressant to your brain. Terrible depressant. A lot of about 50% of the suicides in the United States are alcohol related, but they're not all alcoholics. If a set of circumstances hits a human being, someone hears maybe that he might be fired, or he has something on his mind and drinks a little, they can fall into a depressed state where they're not thinking clearly and commit suicide, and it has happened. They're not all alcoholics, but it is alcohol related.
Do you wish that booze were not a subject for humor?
I do now, and I've played my share of comedy drunks. I did on Broadway, as a matter of fact, in a review. It was my big thing to come out in one and do a drunk.
Do you wish Dean Martin would let up on the booze humor?
I don't like to get that narrow-minded about it, really.
Yeah.
I don't like to be a crusader or have missionary zeal about booze. A lot of people can drink socially, and they don't have any propensity towards alcoholism. They'll never become alcoholics.
Yeah.
There are a lot of non-alcoholic, irresponsible drinkers who drive and do such things as that.
Yeah.
But unless booze could just disappear from the face of the earth, I don't think there's anything that can be done about it.
Did you drive when you were drunk?
I have.
Yeah.
Yes, I have. Fortunately, nothing ever happened to me.
Did you roll a car over once alone? Was that
I had a wreck in a sports car that was not related to alcohol. I happened to be sober at the time.
Gee. There's a
I
negative
didn't hurt
lesson in
myself.
that, I guess.
Yes.
Can you tell what the worst aspect of it is when you're drunk? Is it, looking back over it all, is it the damage you do to yourself? Is it the damage you do to your wife or your kids? Or,
Well, all of that is a terrible thing, because you do have terrible guilt and terrible shame. What really happens is that most of us have fairly high values, and we get into characterological conflict. Our behavior is in conflict with our values, and it's a guilt-producing thing. But you're really in a grip of something you cannot do anything about. Cannot do anything about without help.
You said your behavior is in conflict with your values. I mean, is it as simple as the fact that your parents would be ashamed of you if they saw what had become of you? Did it harken back to your fairly strict upbringing, or was it a strict?
Yes, I think it was a strict upbringing.
Yeah.
I think, I was raised in the church, in the Presbyterian church.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I didn't drink much at all in my 20s. I was in my middle 30s before I even started. And then it was social, I was one of those people who was bound to be trapped and didn't know. just had no way of knowing. That's why I'm talking about it now. There are ways to know.
Is there a test people can take, or will there ever be, where they take a piece of litmus paper or something and find out if you're a potential alcoholic?
I think probably. Just in the last year, they found out an awful lot about what it does physically, how it affects people who might be alcoholics. I think the day will come. Whether they'll ever find out exactly what causes it, it seems to be a variety of factors. Hormonal, chemistry, glandular, something to do with the brain cells. There are a number of things that make a human being adapt to it. And they get to the place where they like the calories from alcohol because they're very easy to assimilate. And everything else is too hard to assimilate. Alcohol, you know, diffuses across your brain instantly.
Yeah.
And it just is easier to, and people can go for weeks and weeks just on the calories from alcohol and no other food.
Now, how long was your siege, your bad drinking years?
That's very hard for me to say. Very hard. I would imagine about 7 years. Now that's my own guess, and I'm probably being very conservative about it myself. As someone who observed me over that time might say, "Are you kidding?"
Does it show in your liver?
It fortunately, I didn't have any damage. Any damage. It was slightly enlarged, and would have gone into the cells in your liver will puff up to try and take on the job of assimilating all that acetic alcohol that's going into the system, and it just can't. And eventually, cells will begin to die. And then you're into cirrhosis of the liver, and you're dead.
When you were in the haze of being, when you were boozing, forgive the crude term, when you were drinking, could you see through that haze people's attitude changing toward you, and people beginning to not want to come over to the house in the evening or anymore? And
Well, the people who came over liked to drink as much as I did.
you attract that sort of person?
I usually drank at home, I must say. I wasn't a swinger or anything like that. I just drank at home. Got grandiose and verbose. Loved to debate things like religion and all those things. And now I go to parties, cocktail parties, where I don't drink, and to stand off objectively and watch the transition of a cocktail party between 0.25 per millimeter, I guess it is, blood alcohol. As it goes up, the decibels, it gets louder and louder in the room. Suddenly people are talking about politics and religion and solving Watergate.
Yeah.
And then a few more drinks, a couple of hours later, and it's really loud, and a lot of hearty laughter and backslapping and hugging, and the guys are starting to tell dirty jokes, the ones they wouldn't tell otherwise.
Yeah.
And then later in the evening, about 80% of those people will be very euphoric and happy, but about 20% will either be angry or very sad. You'll see people sitting down crying and saying, "Leave me alone, you don't understand," or somebody will get in a terrible fight.
Can you tell which ones are the problem drinkers?
Well, the ones who stay till the party is over and then some usually are the problem drinkers.
Yeah.
Maybe headed for addiction, but there are a lot of heavy drinkers who are doing a lot of damage to their liver and to their brain who are not alcoholics, are not addicts.
Not technically alcoholics, but,
Yeah.
but are damaging themselves with liquor.
Yes, with heavy drinking.
That's the tough part, is to say I am an alcoholic, isn't it?
It really is. It's the hardest part of treatment. No matter how much help you have, the job is to get somebody to admit that they can't handle it. They have no control over alcohol if they drink.
How many members does AA have in America?
I've read that it's about 250,000.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's so or not. I just read it. But it seems to me that AA is having better luck than most.
Yeah.
Although there are a few really up-to-date treatment centers around the country that are doing a marvelous job. I went as I said, last May and studied for 3 weeks as a therapist, kind of interned. And it's marvelous to see it happen, to see people really get free of it and know that life's going to change for them. They take an interest in life. I've seen people who had long ago let their hobbies, everything they used to do, go by the boards because drinking took up such a big hunk of their day. And they get their energy back and their zest for life, and even a certain spirituality in their lives comes back. And they're different people. And they say, I've heard people actually say, "I'm glad I was an alcoholic.
It's like the idea
I
that
learned
when-
so much about myself."
Yeah, going through the fire.
Yes.
Do they say, "Are you Van Dyke? What did you have to drink for? You had everything." Do you get that attitude from people?
That's true, as if something tragic had to happen That's the common belief about alcoholism, unfortunately. That there's something terribly wrong in your life or you wouldn't do it. But an alcoholic drinks for the same reasons that the social drinker does. Relief from tension and stress, feel comfortable with strange people, to lubricate social intercourse. Really, is what it is.
Do you envy me that I can take a drink and not?
No, I went through about a year, as I guess most recovering alcoholics do. It takes a year for your system to get back to where it was before. Really resenting it sometimes. Other people could drink. Now I have no desire to drink. And I don't envy people who do at all.
Yeah, that's good. Well, let's talk about less, in some sense, depressing things for
Yes.
you, because you did that so well. Where does your great agility come from physically? Do you come from a family of acrobats? What is it?
No, I come from a family of very wiry, thin people.
You
My
do?
whole family, my father's, even now at 72, is very agile.
Yeah.
He's thin too, and my grandmother was thin. They're just that kind of a family.
Is your grandmother the one who does actually? I read somewhere she did a backflip or something at 84. or
Oh,
something
you
like that?
got that from Carl Reiner. That's
Oh.
one of his favorite stories about my grandmother. At 86, I went to visit her in the hospital,
Yeah.
and she said, "Dickie, I have some snapshots taken of you when you were a little boy. They're over here in the drawer," and she did a backflip over the bed to the other side of the bed.
At 84?
I couldn't believe it. 86.
86. How long did it take?
No, it was
Did she
beautiful.
do just in one move?
One beautiful backflip right over the bed onto the other side.
That's wonderful.
She thought nothing of it.
That sounds like Bob and Ray, doesn't it? We're here
That's
talking to
right.
the flippy grandmother today, and your whole family is that way. So you have you practically have a dancer's muscles, probably. I mean, you can do all sorts of. Do you do yoga?
Yes, I do. This has just been in the last couple of years. I got started doing yoga.
Carol Burnett told me for an hour once about how much she's doing yoga and how much it's meant to her, and why.
That's right. I understand she uses it before a show.
Yeah, yeah.
If I did it before a show, I wouldn't be able to do a show. I do it in the morning when I get up.
Because it's too relaxing. Is that why?
Yeah. Well, I wear myself out with some of it's strenuous. Most of it's relaxing and stretching muscles. But yoga sit-ups are toughies.
How do they go?
Well, your legs have to come up too. You know, you come up in a V like that.
Oh,
Your legs stay straight and they come up. And 25 of those. Good night, Dick.
is it this? You start like this, and then what?
Then everything comes up straight. Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
You mean this?
Yeah, but you leave your hands on the floor. It's that.
Oh! Like that?
Yeah, that's right. You get your forehead and your knee as close as you can. You really.
Yeah.
And it's a great exercise, but it's tiring.
I know.
It's hard.
I just
You
pulled
just-
something. That's good for you, though. I think. I have a feeling. What else do you do? You did magic as a kid. That's one thing we have in common.
That's
besides
right,
our,
we do. I
besides
haven't done
being-
it since I was a kid. You still do it, don't you?
Well, I do a little. I did some. In fact, I did some on a show that was, I think, has already been seen, depending on what point in time we are in right now. But do you do any? Have you kept up with it? Do you still go to the
No.
magic shops?
Oh, I still go to magic shops and wander around.
That's fun.
I never had the real talent for it. I used to practice in front of the mirror with the cards. Never could do it. Have you ever seen Milton Berle handle cards?
Yes, he's quite good.
He's amazingly good.
And if other people are handling them, he'll snatch them away and handle them.
Yeah, that's right.
He's very
right.
good. I saw him do magic on the Old Texaco Theater, and he was wonderful.
Yeah, well, what do you do?
Well, I do rope, I do cards, I do most of the stuff. But I made a living in high school as a magician. I managed to put myself
paid?
through a free high school by, no, I got 30, some nights I got $35 from doing the Lions Club. I did 45 minutes of dazzling magic.
I did the Lions Club and the Kiwanis Ladies Night and all those, but I didn't get paid. Nobody ever paid me for it.
You were known as a dumb magician then. Oh yeah, you charge them, you send a bill in.
was. Well,
That's
you really
good. What do you
put your-
call that? You and I are both fascinated with Stan Laurel, and I think also with dialects, and we both, people don't know this, maybe about me anyway, but we both knew Stan Laurel. And
Yes.
I think, is that called a bilateral sibilance that he had? It was some
That's
speech.
exactly what it is. I didn't realize what it was.
It's a speech defect that I know, as you know, his relatives told him he could never go on the stage because he'd never be a success in show business because he had that bilateral sibilance, which sort of sounds like that.
Yes, very good.
I can't imagine, both of us doing him might be a bit hard to take here.
Yes.
But it was a shock, wasn't it, when you first met Laurel, that he didn't sound like the Laurel of the screen exactly, but he'd say, very nice to see you, lad. It certainly
Yes.
was nice, and he had that sort of S sound. And he was...
That bilateral sibilance.
Bilateral
is what
sibilance,
that was.
I guess that's what it... Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But he
I'd
lived
s-
out in that little part. You wanted to see him, didn't you, in
Yeah.
Santa Monica?
I've seen you do him a couple of times, and it's just startling.
Oh, God, the first time I ever did him was after I had met him. And I did it with Henry Calvin. He used to be Captain Garcia on Zorro. He was a big fat guy. He did Ollie, and I did Stan. But Stan knew I was going to do it, and I begged him to come down to the studio and give me a little help. No, he wouldn't go out in public, at all.
Yeah.
He wanted people to remember him as he was. But I called him after the show was on the air and said, how did I do? And he said, well, Dickie. He called me Dickie. He gave me 20 minutes of notes of things I had done wrong
But you were directed by Stan Laurel.
after the fact,
Yeah.
which was a big help. He didn't like that derby at all. Incidentally, he promised me his derby, and nobody's been able to find it to this
really?
day. I never got it. But,
I bet somebody snatched it.
and he
Do you
didn't
know-
wear heels. He took the heels off his shoes to give him that kind of funny stance that he had, and I hadn't done that. He used paper clips as cufflinks, and I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
I forget all the things, but 20 minutes of notes, but he ended up by saying, you were good. He was marvelous.
I know he liked you very much. He used to talk. He talked to me about you.
I used to
was,
bug him enough.
Yeah. People had the bad taste to come over and sometimes then talk as him the whole time they were there. I mean, just. He said
Oh.
one time he almost never swore, but he did at this point. He wouldn't. I don't think his wife would mind my telling this. I said, "Do you like people imitating you?" And he said, "Well, it's all right sometimes, but." The other day, this fella came in and he talked like me the entire time, and it was so damn embarrassing. I was bastard. I didn't know where to look. And his voice went up like it did in the movie, and I got goose pimples all over.
Do you know he hated that cry? He didn't
No, I
like
didn't
to do the
know
cry.
that. Where'd it come from?
He did it just in a rehearsal or on a stage one time, and the director liked it and made him do it. And he
Yeah.
absolutely hated it. He didn't think the cry was funny.
That is
But he
strange,
did it
'cause
because
it's one of
it
his
made a
trade-
hit with the public, of course, and he always did it after that. But he said, I never could understand why that was funny.
I exaggerated just then a little bit the squeakiness of it, but on the screen he really went way up. Can you
No,
get
I
the
couldn't
level
get it.
of it
No,
went
you-
way?
He did. That's perfect. I can't get it.
I asked him if he ever got hurt in any of those films that they did, because they did all that stuff that looked falling out of chimneys and down roller coasters and things like that. And he said the only time he ever got hurt was once he stepped off the curb between takes on a street set while talking to somebody.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know what.
And what, put his back out or something?
Yeah,
I
just
suppose.
wrenched his back. Like an athlete will
Yeah.
get hurt in the lawn playing with his dog or something.
You know, I used to go out also and visit Buster Keaton, who lived fairly near. I wangled an introduction to him.
Gosh.
He was 68 at the time and still could do everything he did when he was a young man. I'd always been fascinated with the trick he used to do of putting one foot up on the table and then the other foot, and then he would just stay poised in the air, and then he'd drop.
It looked like a cartoon. You would think it couldn't happen in real life.
I
I
don't
saw
know how
him
he-
do that on the Gary Moore show once live. And I don't know if people realize what you just described, but he literally put one leg up on something about as high as a card table.
Yeah.
Now one leg's down, and he lifted the other leg up, and there was an instant, and then onto his back,
Just
onto the
float.
floor.
Well, he did it in his kitchen on the counter for me, and you know how high they are.
Yeah.
At 68 years old, I would have killed myself.
He and your grandmother would have flipped over each other. Huh?
What a pair!
Talking with Dick Van Dyke, in case you think it's Walter Houston.
John,
I mean John
I was
Houston.
in it. You know that-
Walter's his father, right?
all those pictures of the illustrious people who've been on this show is unnerving. I really got nervous back there.
Oh, back in the green room?
Yes, all those great. I mean, you go for nothing but class, really. Nothing but the best. And I felt so out of place.
And you have to follow all the...
Doesn't it? Well, too bad. You hit a... But I looked at John Houston with that beard, and I really looked like him.
You thought it was a mirror. I saw you trying to
Trying to straighten my beard.
straighten
my
your
nose.
tie. You married your high school sweetheart. Just is that one of those sickening things they put in your biography that
No,
isn't
I
really
really
true?
did.
You actually did.
Really married to my high school sweetheart. Somebody just asked me in the audience if she was an actress, and she never was.
Yeah.
She
And you
re-
married her on radio, as you're probably sick of hearing. But
Yes,
I
on
don't know,
Bride and Groom.
Our younger viewers won't remember, but there was a radio show, believe it or not, called Bride and Groom, and people had the poor taste to get married on radio. And this man was.
That's right. I was a starving nightclub actor at the time.
You were glad to get it.
Yeah, because they gave you furniture, the ring, they paid for the license, and they sent you away on a week's honeymoon, all free.
Really?
That's the only way I could get married. I had no money at all.
When the show was canceled, did you feel divorced? Annulled
That's really
or
all I
anything?
remember. Well, we have the film and the tape. We listen to it every anniversary.
Yeah. They gave you a
Dumb.
tape of it?
Yeah. Yeah, they gave us a tape.
That's really sad.
Actually, it was a record. There were no tapes when we got married.
Do they say, for example, do you take this man to be your lawful wedded husband or something, and then say, we'll take a message and we'll be right back before you answer?
Actually, you were not married on the air. They took you to a beautiful little chapel,
Oh.
the Chapman Park Hotel in Los Angeles. And you'd only told the story of your courtship, which had to be interesting and unusual and macabre, so we made one up. But we didn't tell the truth.
You didn't?
Yeah, well, I wrote in, made up one. That's how we got on the show.
I hope they're listening and take all your prizes back.
Take all my prizes.
They may take your
The
wife
iron
and your
and the
prizes back. Yeah.
The
Say-
silent- You know the way they shoot that, there's no animated characters there. They don't do the animation, and then you do the dance. I did the dance with the animators on the stage telling me where they would be.
And then they put the penguins in later?
Yes, I only saw that at the premiere when the movie opened. I just loved it.
Who drew the girl? She looked very lifelike.
Didn't she, though? You know, I
I've
just
seen
did
her
a
somewhere.
special with Julie in February. I was in London.
In London.
And Julie, after all this time, looks just, I was old and gray. Julie looks just the same. She has not aged at all.
I knew
There's
her
a picture
before
of
you
her in
did.
the attic. Did you
I
really?
bet I did. I saw the world premiere performance in the world, anywhere, in the whole world, of My Fair Lady in New Haven before it came to New York. And I went
you knew her
backstage.
before I did.
And there was this, 17-year-old girl who was the star then, and it was,
she's 17.
people were saying, she's going to be some star. And I said, she's nothing.
That is
And they won.
little, lateral sibilance there.
Yeah. But so I did know her before. I think she was 17 then, or was she 27? What does it matter?
No, she had to have been 17.
Yeah.
Had to have been 17 then. You know, I remember we were what were we? The big Columbus Day parade in San Francisco. Julie and I were the marshals of the parade before the picture came out, and nobody knew who she was in San Francisco. She'd been on Broadway, but she'd never done a picture, and nobody knew who she was. And I thought at that time, just you wait. When you see, and then she became one of the biggest stars in the whole world.
That's a strange period in an actor's life when they know that they're going to or something. I met Peter O'Toole just before Lawrence of Arabia came out, and he was here in this country to talk about it. And we could walk down the street and no one knew who he was, but he said it's a very strange feeling to know that I won't be able to walk down the street again in 3 months.
He
And
knew that
he
that was going to
right.
happen to him.
Yeah, strange feeling. Hey, who were the Merry Mutes, and do you dare talk about it, or have you hushed that part of your life up?
I have tried to. I broke into show business during a time when pantomiming to popular records was a very big thing in Los Angeles.
I know, it's so corny, and yet it was a big thing.
Oh, I had a partner who actually he had an act before, and he put me into show business.
Yeah.
We drove out in his Chevy to Los Angeles from Danville, Illinois, and got a job. We auditioned and got a job, but he didn't try me out till we got there. Fortunately, I worked out. And we'd do Spike Jones' record, Red Eagle and the Natural Seven, and
remember
we
that.
developed quite a following around Los Angeles. Wherever we went, a group of people would come and see our act. And then we got to bigger and bigger nightclubs, played Las Vegas, and finally opened at the Blue Angel in New York. And those sophisticated people came in to see the act and stared at us. Literally just sat there and stared at us.
That's murder, isn't it?
I think it was the beginning of my drinking.
Yes, I've seen some people drop dead at the Blue Angel on stage. I have a theory that the
good
Blue
even.
Angel was not all that sophisticated, that they in their way were a certain sort of hick themselves in the audience. But
Well, strangely enough, we did well on Saturday night when the
Yeah.
other people from my hometown would come in, and see it. But during the week, I think they were the real New Yorkers, the kind who, work on Time magazine or something. The real sophisticates of the world.
wow.
And I had a lot of funny hats and fell down a lot. And they just
And you did Spike Jones records, Cocktails for Two, and all the old...
all the old Spike Jones records, yeah.
What, you know what's coming back to me as I see you sitting there? I remember you on the morning show. I think it was called
you
the
born
morning
then?
show, wasn't it? I was born during it, but I do remember it.
I died during it.
No, I do remember you on there. And
1955.
yeah. Can
That's
you tell
right.
about your first day?
Oh, well, you had to get up. I lived on Long Island, and I had to get up at 4 in the morning in order to be at the studios in Grand Central Station, upstairs, at 6. An hour of rehearsal, and then we were on the air 3 hours every day, 5 days a week. And I interviewed people. Very bad at it, but I did the news, the weather, everything. And my car wouldn't start that particular morning that I got this job. So I got on the Long Island Railroad, which I had never taken, and went through Manhattan. Right on through it, just stayed on the train, and ended up at the end of the line in Brooklyn.
Slight will to fail there, or something. like that.
Something. And I showed up about 45 minutes. I finally took a cab, and Merv Griffin was the singer on the show at that time, and Merv was doing the show very well.
You mean they put him in for you?
Yes, he was part of the cast on the show. He was the singer. And he had been handling the show, and it did it so well, I'm lucky they didn't fire me right then.
What became of him?
He's still doing the same thing, as a matter of fact.
You see that guy in Grand Central doing the show? Yeah, that was, what years were those, back in...
55 to
50s?
56.
Yeah.
I got about 4 hours sleep a night for a solid year. I never recovered from that. Never recovered.
That's really like a bad dream, the idea of you have it, it's your first day on television and you can't find Manhattan Island.
Couldn't find it.
Can you thread a needle?
I used to have musicians who'd come in to be interviewed who had just left the nightclubs where they worked at that hour, be zonked. And I would prop them in a chair and interview them and ask the questions and give the answers because they couldn't talk. Honestly.
It's amazing what people used to buy on television. Can you do one of the old Mary Mutes numbers for us if we put a
I
Spike
couldn't
Jones
remember.
record on?
You know how long
I
ago that
wouldn't do
was?
that. I wouldn't do that.
27 years.
Yeah.
Which is how long I've been married. I started that and got married in the same year.
That's incredible. What was the thing you used to do that used to get me all? Oh, the imaginary dog. How long ago did you do that? Do you remember doing a thing with an imaginary dog?
Yeah, but I don't remember what it was. He died.
You had an imaginary dog on it. It was a really
It was a
hilarious
little piece of pantomime, yeah. I don't remember. That was on the old Gary Moore daytime show.
Yeah.
Gary Moore paid for my groceries for several years there.
Do you want to do it for us, or should we imagine it?
You're going to have to imagine. I don't even remember it. I honestly don't remember it.
I won't. That's a dirty trick.
I don't remember it.
Yeah. Used to do the imaginary dog.
An imaginary dog, yeah.
Hey, speaking of dogs, what's Mary Tyler Moore like?
Oh, boy.
I did that one time on the show before, years ago. Someone was on, and I said, it was Rhoda was guesting her.
You asked her about Mary?
Valerie Harper, and I said, everybody thinks Mary Tyler Moore is so nice, and yet we in the business know that she swears like a trooper and, and spits on the other actors. And it was my heavy-handed attempt at humor. You should have seen the
Valerie
mail
do?
I got.
Oh, did they really jump
Oh,
on
yeah.
her?
Yeah.
I can imagine. You know what? The best thing about Mary Tyler Moore as a performer is that when people think of her, they just think of her as a beautiful, charming actress.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, she's probably the most accomplished comedian in the business. But she is so good at it that you watch the show, you feel good and you laugh, but you don't think, well, she was really funny.
You don't think of it as comedy so much because it
No.
isn't so broad.
It isn't broad. She's
Yeah.
very, very good.
Yeah.
She's just great.
I've never met her. Now I probably never will.
You
'cause
never
now-
met her?
No.
You probably never will.
Can you introduce me if...
Certainly, I'm still on good terms. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That-
Looks like the oldest magician in the world.
It does, doesn't it? We were just looking at that still of you. You looked like...
I think that's what it was. A
sketch you did called
I
The Oldest Magician in the
The
World?
Oldest Magician in the World. And you would have loved that because I had a lot of really great illusions that I did. But the gimmick of the sketch was that everything happened after the fact. I would do the trick and it wouldn't pay off. And as I walked away, then whatever the production was would go off and I never knew it.
I saw that. What was it on? The Comedy Hour or something?
No,
Or
it was a
what
special that I did.
I remember that now.
Yeah, the oldest, it was.
And
you would do a lot
yes,
of
he
stuff
wasn't looking when the thing happened.
Yeah, he never saw any of his
Yeah.
own tricks.
Do you think about comedy and theories of comedy and that sort of thing? Do you buy that?
I
sort of-
try to, but it doesn't work. It isn't,
Yeah.
I love to talk about the theory of comedy, but I could never put it into practice. I have to forget all that.
Do you rank comedians? Like, who do you think is the
Don't we
greatest
all?
and so on? Yeah. Do you put Keaton above Laurel, Laurel above Chaplin?
Well, I've always loved Stan Laurel the best, and not simply because he was the greatest. There was a great sweetness about him that I loved, that no one else seemed to have. To me, Laurel and Hardy together was the world's greatest love story. They just, the way they depended on each other and those two, it's hard to say. They obviously, they fought like children, but they loved each other, obviously, a great deal. And the one picture when they had been separated by the war, I don't know whether you remember that or not.
Yes, it
And-
opens with Stan turning. He's still. He's in a trench and he's doing sentry duty.
That's right. And he ends up in an old soldier's home,
Yeah.
sitting in a wheelchair.
That's right. What is it?
And he's sitting on his leg, so it looks like he's lost his leg. And Ollie comes up and they embrace. And the only thing that Stan says is, "Do you remember how dumb I used to be? Well, I'm better now." After all.
And he has his leg bent under him, and Hardy carries him
carries him
everywhere,
all
and he
the
lets him
way.
carry him. Right?
And Stan never says anything.
Yeah. Who do you think? Did you meet Hardy ever?
Never, no. He had passed away before I ever got to California.
Yeah. I've never met anyone who knew Hardy. Not that people didn't, but I mean, I've only met people who knew Laurel, and I would love to know what he was like off camera. They say he had very courtly manners and so on.
Yes.
Very gentlemanly. He was a Southern gentleman from Georgia, I believe.
Yes, he was. That Georgia accent came out once in a while. You heard it.
Yes, it's that I don't know what they call it in phonetics, but it's the ER sound in servant or bourbon.
Yes, it's
I'm
servant.
not your servant.
That's it.
I can't quite do it. It's not Brooklyn. It's not soivant, but
It's almost servant.
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 Yeah, you get it in Mississippi, Georgia, around in there.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Laurel was Lancashire, I think.
Yes, that's right. He was. He said whenever he went back to England, they told him he was an American now. He had no accent at all to them.
Yes, the Lancashire accent is quite thick.
Yeah.
Where do you put Chaplin on the?
My own personal opinion, I put him low. I didn't enjoy him as a kid, and even when I try very hard to appreciate him like I do opera. You know, I listen, but I can't come around to it. To me, you're always conscious of what Charlie Chaplin was doing while he did it. There's some actors today, I sit and watch them on the screen and I say, is that great acting? When I should be caught up in the story and empathizing and believing them, I'm watching their technique shows.
Yes.
And
I
to
know.
me, Chaplin's technique always showed. You're always saying, look at that man, would you look at that move? Rather than being caught up with the story and the person he was playing.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm making that very clear or not, but I
Yeah,
know
you
what
are.
I'm saying.
Are you not moved by the places you're supposed to be moved by Chaplin and the classic scenes like the last shot in City Lights and?
No, for some reason it's overly dramatized for me.
Really?
It's so well designed to pull at my heartstrings that it doesn't.
Yes.
That's just me.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Laurel and Hardy could make me cry when I was a little boy.
Yeah.
I just loved them.
It's supposed to be sacrilege, you know, to say that Chaplin is not the greatest.
Well, I'll send you some of the mail I'm going to get after the show.
Yeah, but it's pointless, I suppose, in a way, to say, you know, who's third, fourth, and fifth. And
Only in our own
first, no, but
estimation.
In a way,
It's fun to talk about.
Yeah.
But Stan Laurel, you never did that with him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in later years, now that I watch and rewatch all those old, I can see how great his technique was, how beautifully he moved, and what a tremendous sense of timing he had. But I never noticed it before. All I did was laugh, and laugh very, very hard.
I sometimes think as much as I loved Stan Laurel, both on the screen and I loved meeting him, he was such a nice man, that Hardy gets underestimated at times. And he was, to me, a faultless screen comedian, Hardy. He was
yes.
just that great grace and never makes a move that's too broad for the camera.
No, he was the one that invented the take-ems, the look into camera, which was, you know, and
That's right,
they
the
also
burn
were
in
the
it.
ones who invented the off-stage joke. Or off-camera joke.
Like
If
what?
Stan would walk by Ollie with, say, a load of something,
Mm-hmm.
headed for the stairs. You never saw him fall down the stairs. It would just stay on
Yeah.
ollie, you know, going, No one had ever done that in cinema before.
It's amazing.
Comedy.
Someone had to invent it, isn't it? And he did.
Yeah. I guess Stan was the creative one of the two.
He
Ollie
was.
was a golfer.
Yeah, he told me that he used to save, when he was directing Hardy, that he would save the burns, the angry look into the camera, till the end of the day, because Hardy was waiting to get out on the golf course. And he was furious at having to wait, so that there was some true anger.